Live here.
Live!
But we don't have to necessarily know what that means.
What's the someday of blank?
I don't
there's
know
a
that we
reason
want to-
this story happens now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the movie writes itself.
Ooh.
Well,
I'm still streaming. How do I stop streaming? No!
here we are. Oh,
How you doing, Ben? What did you do over the weekend?
I'm good. My wife had a baby, so I am a daddy of 2 little girls now.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Ben.
Thank you. Yes. Daddy. Life will never be the same again.
Indeed. I just texted some friends of mine. They were like, "Hey, are you free on Saturday night to play some Warhammer?" And my wife's going away this weekend, and so I said, I'm with the kids. And they sent a GIF of Dumbledore going, "Good luck."
That's very
That'll
funny.
be you. That'll be you soon. That'll be you.
Well, welcome back to Ben and Jake Rate a Movie. I'm
Yes.
Big, and this is Jake, insert witty name, Thornton.
Yes, I couldn't come up with anything today. But this is the thing. Sometimes when we're writing a script, we're like, there needs to be a line here. And after about 5 or 10 minutes, we just go, insert witty line here. So that's what I'm doing today. I had no imagination, so I just went, insert witty line.
Yeah.
So
Lily's back with us.
Hey, Lily.
Yay. Hi, Lily.
Happy Wednesday.
So we are here once again doing our live stream of writing our new spec, which I'm very excited to be back doing.
Yes.
But the last 2 sessions we did a little intro whereby we talked about business related things.
I was going to ask you if you wanted to do something similar. I didn't get a chance to do that pre the show. So
I think we should.
You got a little topic?
Well, so the question is, here's one thing that someone asked us to do. We mentioned it, and then they said, yes, please do an episode on pitching. And I think that the craft of pitching is something that we should do an entire episode on.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that we talked about IP last time, I believe, or 2 times ago. I was thinking maybe we can talk about the business of pitching, what it looks like in terms of the different stages of pitching, the length, the rules, the various ideas that people have, the difference between pitching a movie versus pitching a TV show, which very different.
Yeah.
You and I, Jake and I, were quite successful selling pitches for most of our career. We've actually only sold 2 spec screenplays, Winter's Night and The Princess, and all of the rest of the work that we've gotten has been pitching. Some originals, which is also different than on IP and adaptations.
Yes.
And I think it's important to understand a few things about pitching. So the first thing is that when you're pitching a movie to a studio, you're pitching them essentially what you will write when they hire you.
Yes.
So the way it works is you're pitching them a movie, and if they think that movie is something that they would want to make, the way it's then constructed is that they then hire you to write your own idea, but they claim that is their idea, and that is
it's not a legal gray area. That's the moment that we have arrived to in terms of our contract, and there are reasons that actually you want that. One of which is because technically you are then an employee of the studio. You are doing a work for hire, and therefore you get things like unions and all the stuff that you get as being a member of the WGA, which includes residuals, credit protection, pension and health benefits, plus a myriad of other benefits as well. So yes, it's one of those slightly odd things. And actually, even when you have spec something as well, there is a moment where they say, well, this was written under a work for hire. So
that's right. And so there is this thing that can happen whereby you pitch an idea.
Yeah.
They love the idea. They want to buy the idea. Wonderful. You sign the contracts. The idea becomes theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come back to you and say, well, we'd like to change the idea. And you go, but we sold you a pitch. You've hired us to write the pitch. Well, yes, but what we really liked was the broad idea. We need to recraft the entire thing. And here's, again, from
it has to be the entire thing, but there might be an element they want. They might say, we really want a love story. Can you focus a bit more on X,
right? Or like our experience on the House of the Scorpion, it was literally, we need to recraft the entire pilot.
Yeah.
Even though we've just sold a pitch of the show. Now that's a little bit different because they were buying a series and not just a pilot, so it was a little bit different. But the interesting thing about, I think, pitches versus screenplays from a business perspective is that the buyers feel much more in control of essentially having their say much earlier on with a pitch. That can be scary and also exciting. So on the one hand, I think screenplays will sell potentially easier if it's really good and the buyer goes, oh, it's already here. I only need to make a few adjustments.
Unless it's this concept is so great, while the script might not fully live up to that concept, the idea is so great that we have to have this idea.
Right.
And we've heard examples of big movies where that's happened from the producers who are like, the original script wasn't that great, but the idea was so great we knew that we could hopefully get it.
Edge of Tomorrow is an example of that.
Totally.
The Tom Cruise movie.
Sure.
And that's a crazy story, actually. Look it up online. It's one crazy story. But, I think, so basically, here's the lowdown of at least how we've gone about selling pitches. You have an idea. It's great. Usually for us, you're in a general meeting with a producer. Generals are what writers do to meet or reconnect with people that are producers primarily, sometimes studio executives. We've had generals with those too, but most of your generals end up being with producers. I'd love more generals with directors. It just doesn't seem to happen that often. We've only had a couple. And so you'll pitch out you hear the term elevator pitch all the time. And I think the elevator pitch is important. It does not, there is no rule.
What's an elevator pitch, Ben?
An elevator pitch is something short, easy to understand, that encapsulates the concept, the thing what's the trailer? It's basically a trailer for your pitch, right? And
it comes from the idea that you happen to step into an elevator with an executive, and you have until the time they get off of the elevator to get your idea out. That's where the name comes from. So you're thinking, can you say the idea of your movie in about 20 to 30 seconds?
Yeah. And those can be anywhere from it's this meets that, or a little bit longer. This character who goes on this adventure that is really amazing. But the elevator pitch, that short bite, is what's going to hopefully get a producer to go, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have more? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. We have had elevator pitches literally where we've gone in and we attached a producer on a project where it was one sentence. We just had a concept. It was really, really broad. So then if you like the producer, you think they're right for the project, hopefully you didn't pitch them this idea if you didn't think they were right for the project. We've run into that problem as well. You learn from your mistakes. And then you go away and you develop your pitch. Now, again, I think we'll do a whole session on the craft of that. But the business side is then you go back into the producer and you go, here's my pitch. Now, we'll start with features because that's what we're working on right now. Feature stack. Generally speaking, our feature pitches are between 22 and 26 minutes. That's around the time. Now, for us,
Yeah. And some people, it's interesting, may say that that's too long.
They may. I'd be curious to know how many pitches those people have sold.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I hear people say no more than 20. Well, here's the thing. I think what me and Ben have as an advantage is the fact that there's two of us. Now, what I mean by that is the human brain can only listen to a certain voice without getting distracted and daydreaming for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
But if you add another voice, change voices, you can actually re-engage that person pretty quickly.
Yeah. So
I think that our pitches don't feel like that length of time because there's two different voices doing that. So I think that has
I think, and there's a lot of obviously different people have different styles and will pitch differently. I think you have a lot more flexibility in a feature pitch. We've definitely learned in terms of how you want to pitch it. We actually have our own little template that maybe we'll decide that we want to share. It's very simple. I'm happy to share it. It's literally, I mean, it's so simple, but it helps us go, here's the structural nature of the pitch. And I think, again, I want to save that for the creative conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
But let's say you go in, you pitch your 25 minutes, and the producer goes, I fucking love this. But I have notes.
Yes, or I have some questions.
I have questions.
Yes.
I don't think we've ever pitched a producer and not had to do another round.
Yeah.
Using their feedback.
Absolutely right. Yes.
People,
just like the studio, they want to feel that they've had input into this project. And again, a lot of the times it's good stuff. If
it's a good producer, it should be good stuff.
They
know what they're talking about.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, the hard part about that from a business standpoint is you're doing all this for free. And you are now being asked to go back and work on your pitch that you love for free for a producer who is not paying you, and neither is the buyer at the end of the day. But here's the thing, and people can argue this on Twitter all day long. Free work in this context is worth it.
Let's be clear, although you're developing it with this producer, it's still your work.
Yes.
This is still your idea. If it doesn't sell, you can go and do whatever you want with it. You can go and write it on spec. You could go and turn it into a graphic novel. You could turn it into a book. You could turn it into a Broadway musical.
Yes.
Which we've done.
Not yet. But, you're going to do notes. Let's just be clear. You're going to do notes, and that's okay. And you should not be upset about those notes. You're pushing the ball up. Look, getting anything sold is like pushing a fucking boulder up a hill, right? And the pitch needs to continue to get pushed up that hill. And when that producer loves that pitch, they're going to decide that they want to take it out to the town, or
they may want to package it.
In today's market, packaging is probably your best bet.
Packaging, Ben?
Yeah, well, packaging's a bitch.
Great answer. What's packaging?
That is the answer. No, so packaging is putting elements on studio or a buyer excited enough that they want to pay you $1 million to write your script for them. Now they can look.
So it's like you recently bought a new car.
I did,
and you got all the bells and whistles on your new car. It was like, well, do you want the fancy wing mirrors that allow you to see into time and space when you look into them? Do you want the Back to the Future gizmo that helps you travel through time? So basically, it's like, what's going to make this project as appealing as biased as possible? So is it adding a director? Is it adding an actor? In fact, we're taking a script out at the moment this week, hopefully, yay, that has both a director and an actor attached to it. That's called a package, and a producer.
And that's harder to package with a pitch. I mean, let's be clear. It's not impossible, but it is harder. Sometimes you will have pitched a producer who is not necessarily what they call a 800-pound gorilla in this business. So maybe the first packaging element is to go to your producer who's who's a great development producer, but isn't the big gun. And you go and pitch an 800-pound gorilla producer, and you see if you can package that extra producer element that's going to make the studio go, oh, that guy can make this movie.
Yes.
Then you might decide to pitch talent. We had a project that we can't discuss, but the first thing our producer wanted to do was pitch actresses. We thought directors was the way to go. In his opinion, based on the idea that we had, which was very centrally focused on one character, he was like, this lives or dies based on who plays it. So let's go to actresses first. Those pitches can be very hard to get. I do feel like we're in a place now where talent is realizing that they have to attach themselves to these projects ahead of time because there are just less opportunities. Everything's getting sold with packages. So there aren't opportunities just getting sent their way going, hey, here's a movie. It's already greenlit. Do you want to star in it? The development process has changed to where studios are expecting us as creators to do the work for them. And it used to be really hard to attach to a pitch. Now I do feel like it's getting a little bit easier. But, again, you'll try.
And that would mean that you have to normally pitch either that actor or their team.
Or both. Or three, three hoops. It might be their team, their producing partner, and then them.
And you have to get yeses from all three, obviously.
And these are all hoops. And not only are there hoops, but if you manage to attach this piece of talent, guess what? Notes. You will probably have to go back and tweak your pitch again to satisfy any of this talent's ideas. You want to do that. And there's a reason you want to do that.
Absolutely.
Because it makes them feel invested. They want to feel like this is also their project, even though technically it is not. But you want them to feel that way. And it's good. It's great. So now you've got your package, hopefully. What's the next step? Well, hopefully you also have great agents. And those agents and your producer will discuss where to go.
And let's just say as well, if you don't yet have a great agent or an agent that's really working for you, you can use this leverage to try and get one. You could say to your producer, hey, I would really like an agent. I've been trying to get one for a little while. Would you be so kind as to make some referrals for me? And they well might do that. Or your manager, again, if you have one at this point, may say, let's try and get you an agent in advance of this selling because we can use that as leverage to try and get one for you. So again, if you don't have one at this moment, don't panic, but you can use this, as leverage.
And the real difference now at this stage, business-wise, versus a spec, at this moment in the spec selling process, guess what? Your script goes out and people read it and you sit back and wait. And it actually can be very
horrible.
It's horrible. You have no idea whether they liked it or not. You have no sense of whether they even read it or not. I mean, it's like you're just waiting, twiddling your thumbs, going, man, when are we going to hear anything? With a pitch, the only way you're going to sell it is if you actually get in the room with them. Now it might be on a Zoom room. Back in the day when Jake and I were selling lots of pitches, it was always in their office. And you'll go in, usually with the producer, possibly with the talent, if they're available, but talent is usually unavailable. So a lot of times the talent will call the studio, or they might be on the phone or on the Zoom. We had one pitch over at Sony where our actor was on the phone while we pitched because he was over in Europe somewhere. And you set up these pitches, and what's difficult about setting up a pitch, and it really relies on your agent, your manager, or your producer to pre-pitch. So they have to make these phone calls to the studio, and they have to go, I have this idea by Ben and Jake, who sold The Princess not that long ago, and we've attached,
Charlize Theron.
Charlize Theron to it. Now, in that case, with someone like Charlize Theron, at that moment, they don't even hear the idea.
I know. Yeah.
They literally don't care. Oh, if Charlize wants to do it, I'll hear the pitch. But let's say you get actor who is good, a good attachment, tips the needle a little bit, but not Charlize Theron. They'll want to know the idea. You need to have and supply your producer or agent with a log line, something that they can then use to pitch your pitch.
Yeah.
And it's really important because if they don't get it, how are they going to pitch it?
And it's funny, isn't it? Because we had a viewer a couple of weeks ago saying, "At what point do you come up with a log line?
Yeah,
you know, do you do it? Do you do it when you're writing it, or do you do it when you know?" And ultimately, we might come up with a log, but we won't spend hours working on it. You know, but this is the time when you need that.
Yeah. And it really is spec or pitch. But the nice thing about a spec is you're going to send the script with the log line. And if the title catches them or they're sitting on an airplane and they read your first page, you might grab them even if the log line isn't something that they got to. With a pitch, that phone call is all you get. You get a phone call from your agent or your producer saying, "Hey, executive, I've got this package and I've got these writers and they have a pitch and this is what it's about. Do you want to hear it?" Hopefully they say yes. And then you get to go in and pitch it.
Yes.
And then there's a whole...
And then you do your pitch, which should be well rehearsed. You are allowed to bring notes with you. We bring
not have to memorize it.
You don't have to memorize it. Some people do. I know several writers who do.
Have to. That's my...
don't have to. Absolutely. I don't
No one will judge you. No one's going to say, "I'm not going to buy this idea because you're not a good actor and couldn't memorize this pitch."
Now, what they will, you know, mark you up or down on is what happens after the pitch.
Yeah.
Which is the question and answer session. I'll just go back to the pitch for a second, though, for a moment. Me and Ben don't bring in pages, printed out pages. We bring in our iPads. If you don't have an iPad, that's fine. You could bring in some index cards, whatever works for you. I would probably avoid phone because it looks bad, I think, looking at a phone.
Yeah, looking at a phone is weird. You know what?
It feels like a connotation of, actually. Say again?
Tablets are super cheap. Get a freaking Amazon Fire for $50 to put a PDF on
Now,
it.
there is a reason for this. Because if you have your pitch printed out, they can very easily say, "Would you mind leaving those pages behind?"
Yeah.
Because these pages don't cost you anything. They're not going to ask you to leave your iPad behind.
No, they're not.
You know, but they may well go, "Could you just leave?" And here's the thing. No one's going to ask me to leave an iPad behind.
Nope.
But if they say, "Can you leave your pitch behind?" I'm an asshole if I say no, but you really should not do it.
You shouldn't. Now, but there is a question about leave behinds. Leave behinds have actually started to become more common lately, which is very frustrating. A leave behind is something that you literally leave behind. It is work that you've done. Probably nowadays it would be like a deck, and a deck is essentially a lot of images. If you have a director, actually, if a leave behind from the director would be fantastic. A leave behind from the writer means that we have now put our pitch essentially in narrative form to a certain degree and put it into a document whereby we are then expressing the movie through images. That's what your deck is going to be. Again, if you have a director, a leave behind by the director, perfectly acceptable and actually probably...
And it may include some written work. It may include some plot elements. It might include a log line. It might include a page or two of whatever. It might be, again, I would advise against a whole written out version of your pitch. You know, but could there be just enough to get them to go, "Oh, I remember that." But here's the thing: we worked with a producer briefly a few years ago, and forgive me if I butcher this, Ben, and pick me up, but it was along the lines of, if they can't remember your pitch a couple of days later, it's not good enough.
That's absolutely right. And it was Lorenzo de Bonaventura, who is one of the great producers of Hollywood. And his suggestion for us on the pitch that we did was, make sure there's at least 2 or 3 moments in your pitch that you can't forget. They may forget everything else. They may not remember anything else, but if they can go to their boss and be like, dude, there's this amazing moment where the character does blank, that's enough. Because the boss, and Lorenzo, I think, used to run a studio before he was a producer. And he used to say, he said, if an executive could come into me and remember 2 things from this pitch, that meant it was good enough for me to hear it. And that's important. Now, that's again on the creative side, but from a business perspective, your goal in this pitch is for this person that you're pitching, who most likely is not the president of the studio. We have had the good fortune of pitching a president of a studio once, and he bought it in the room, and that is a completely different scenario. Most of the time, you're pitching a VP or a creative executive, and their job then is to bring your pitch, which is literally nothing but their notes, and they have to bring that to their bosses and go, hey, I just heard this amazing pitch. It's by Ben and Jake. So-and-so's attached. We got this producer. And the boss goes, okay, what's it about? If they can't clearly tell them what it's about, you probably haven't sold it. If your package is good enough, and
totally. Let's get around it. It's like, it's kind of like this, but honestly, the director's great and it's got Charlize Theron attached. Like, okay, fine, buy it.
Right. I mean, that's like a whole other scenario, right? But let's, most of the time, they need to go to their boss and they need to say, hey, do we want to do this kind of movie? And it has this kind of a set piece, and it has this kind of a actor, a lead, and whatever. So again, creatively, find those moments, those things that stick out. Because from a business perspective, it's the only way you're going to get that boulder up that hill a little bit further. And then there's the Q&A.
So let's just talk about this for a while. So the Q&A is going to be the moment where, like the name suggests, the executive or the producer, whatever level you're at, is going to ask you questions about the story. And there are some kind of stock questions that you hear a lot. We had this very recently. One of the stock questions is, can you go into a little bit more depth about the character's arc? And I feel that's a stock question that executives...
You probably have already said it in your pitch.
You probably have. And they just want to hear you say it again in a, just in isolation.
Sometimes they don't even want to hear it. Sometimes it's just because they want to have a question.
They need to have a question. Exactly right. But again, you need to be able... Anyway, point being, you need to have so much more than just your pitch worked out. You need to have the world. You need to have all the arcs worked out. Your pitch is basically the tip of the iceberg on your story. This is what you're presenting to the world. But ultimately, there's so much rich stuff underneath it that you should, as the writer and creator, have already worked out and fully developed. You may come to a moment where you've got your pitch and you're like, it's running too long. It's running too long. What can I take out that's not necessary for the pitch, but I know will be a question in the Q&A? You've got all of that stuff. I mean, here's the thing. Occasionally, though, we've been blindsided by questions in the Q&A.
Oh, yeah.
Many times. You know what? I hadn't thought about that, And honestly, you have to become really good at bullshitting.
Yeah, you gotta come up with it on the fly. You really do.
Never
want to say, I don't know.
Yeah. Or, it's funny. I've never thought about that.
That's not.
Here's what you can. Yeah, and here's the thing. You just go, that's a really, really good question. I'm really glad that you asked that. And during those extra 5 seconds, you're formulating what the answer is going to be. And you know your story and your characters well enough by this time. I mean, you should have spent hours and hours and hours crafting this pitch and learning this story and understanding every single bit of this movie. So when the question comes out, it shouldn't blindside you, but it does sometimes. And you got to be able to work on the fly. And sometimes it doesn't work because that answer on the fly might not be a good answer. We had one time. It's funny, actually. There was a project that was set up. It's on deadline today. And it was a book called 7 Wonders. And about 5 or 6 years ago, me and Ben pitched on that project.
It longer.
It might have even been longer ago. And had this whole great pitch worked out. And the first question out of the producer's mouth destroyed the pitch.
Destroyed the whole pitch.
Destroyed. It's like, well, why doesn't she just do that? And it was like, you know what? That is and it completely stumped us.
And like, in that situation,
yeah, come back in if you figure it out. And we're like, okay, and we never did.
That was nice of them to actually say that. They liked enough of the pitch, but they were like, there's no way we can buy this without this answer. In that case, again, learning experiences, we tried to figure it out. We couldn't, and we never actually went back in. And here it is being sold today. So had we spent the extra time and energy to figure that out, who knows?
And it's got Simulio and Justin Lin.
But, you know, the reality is the Q&A, I think in our experience, the longer the Q&A, the better. Mm-hmm. The more they want to know. And now there's two different types of Q&As. There are questions that are pointed at holes, which that's when you're fucked. And then there's questions that are, I want to know more. Yeah. Because you intrigued me so much. Could you tell me more about these two characters and what they're going to do in the second act? Mm. Can you tell me more about, you know, this set piece that you described? Or can you tell me more about, like, you know, how the third act unfolds? Mm. Those are the kind of questions that hopefully are because they're actually really thinking of buying this project. Yeah. Questions of, you know, I'm not quite sure I understand why that character's in the movie. Mm. You know,
we had that once, didn't we?
We did.
We did.
And you go, well, because, you know, we wanted to have da 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 da, and they go, yeah, but do they add anything? And you're going, oh, fuck. Like, this is a pointed question, because part of their job really is to figure out why should they say no. There's two things that an executive is thinking about when you're pitching this story. And this applies to specs as well. Number one, is this a great movie that when I bring it to my boss, they're going to be impressed by me? And number two, is this the kind of movie that somebody else is going to buy and I'm going to get fucked because I didn't place an offer on it? Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. Their job is to kind of just determine that in the room and afterwards, but also they're looking for reasons to say no. Buying things is expensive. They only have so much of a budget, and they need to be ultra critical. Yeah. You know, there have been times where we have asked, you know, okay, do you have any questions? And people have literally said, no, I think we're good. And that is the kiss of death. Like, honestly, you leave the room going, oh, great, they understood everything. Yeah, we did our jobs. Awesome. Yeah. And they could be the nicest people in the room.
I feel like we had one time where there weren't many questions and we left going, oh, that wasn't good. But then they did place. I can't quite remember what that was, but I think that I vaguely remember. Anyway, but generally, I think that's right.
And here's the thing, and I want to be clear again, and this is all, I'll repeat it 100 times on this podcast. There is no one knows anything. We can't guarantee you that any of this will happen to you. This is just our experience. But let's play out the best case scenario, which is the executive is so excited. They've asked all kinds of things. They had an assistant in the room who took all the great notes, so they have plenty to go to their boss with. And you get the call later that day sometimes. Yeah. Nowadays, everyone's saying it's taking way longer, but we used to get calls that afternoon. We did. But you get the call that says, we'd like to buy this pitch. And then you're doing great. Now, the thing about selling a pitch business-wise is you're not going to make as much as a spec.
That's right.
It's a very different process. They're now hiring you to write essentially what you would have done on spec. Yeah. So that's a different type of payment.
It is. It is. And unfortunately, deals are still constructed as one-step deals for most of the time at the moment. So a one-step deal means they are only going to pay you for one draft.
So fight like hell for two.
Fight like hell for two. If you can get two, that's rad.
The hardest thing is to write a spec, and we have done, well, it's not a spec, to write a draft of a pitch. This literally happened to us on our fourth pitch that we sold. It was a movie. We loved it. We got to write one draft. The head of the studio decided that they didn't want to go forward because of a conflict with another studio. Had we had a second step built in that they were required to pay us, they would have had two options. They could have come to us and said, here's the conflict. Is there a way to work around it? In which case we as brilliant writers would have come up with that idea and had a second bite at the apple.
At it modern day.
Yeah, whatever it might have been. Or they just buy you out of your contract and at least you get more money.
This is true. And again, we've had that. We've been bought out of contracts. You go, hey, there are more steps to do, but we're not going to move forward with this. So just here's some money, go away.
But I will say you're right, Jake. Most feature pitches, sadly, have gone down to one step. The Guild is trying to make that not a thing.
I think they're trying to do it for more younger writers, newer writers, with the more experience.
Like if they're paying you scale, then they need to pay you two steps.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I don't know what the initiative is. We're above scale writers, so we make a good amount of money on that first step. But it's what's so difficult with a first step on a pitch, and this is something you always have to remember when you're doing a pitch. The moment you hit send on that first draft, it's not yours anymore. Your ideas, they bought it. It's theirs. You just did a work for hire for them. It's their idea now. And they do not have to hire you again. They could decide you did enough, but they're going to go with a different writer to try and get it over the line. They could decide that the draft itself just isn't good enough, and maybe they were wrong of buying the pitch in the first place. And here's where another business thing does come in. You'll write a draft. So you sell a pitch and you have a creative meeting. Always you'll have a creative meeting, whether you sell a spec or a pitch, because you'll be commenced on your next step. If it's a spec, it's going to be a rewrite. If it's a pitch, it's going to be your first draft. You'll have that creative meeting and you'll talk with the executive about what they liked and what they didn't like about your pitch, what they are thinking in terms of the movie. They will have their thoughts. If you have a package, a director or an actor, the executive will most likely defer to the director's ideas. You'll basically be writing the script that the director is interested in doing. And then you'll go away from that creative meeting, you'll write your draft, and you'll want to send that draft into the studio because that's when you get paid. But don't send the draft to the studio. Send the draft to your producer. Send the draft, if you have a director, to the director. Send the draft to the star if you have the star, depending on what the producer thinks and what the relationship is. You want notes. You want notes, and you want to do a draft for them. And it's hard because, again, it goes against Guild policy. Technically, you're not supposed to work for free, but let me just
here's the thing. I'm not working for the producer. I'm not working for the director. I'm not working for the actor. I'm working for the studio. I'm not going to send to the studio and do studio notes.
Yes.
But I want the draft that we are sending in to the studio to be the best draft possible that everyone on our side is behind.
You want them, you want the director calling the executive going, I fucking love
this. Exactly right. So, I agree. You should not do notes for your employer. The employer is the student. Now, here's the thing. What's the line? You cannot and should not be doing seismic notes for a producer. I think we talked about this in an earlier episode, whereby they go, Act 2 doesn't work, it's completely wrong. Well, this is what you pitched,
Unless the studio told you to do. You're doing the studio's notes. If your executive told you in your creative meeting, we need to rethink Act 2, well, then you better fucking rethink Act 2. But
and generally, we've experienced, producer notes have been tweaks on what exists already. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're bigger. They have been bigger sometimes, but they've never been, oh my goodness, I've got to throw everything out. But this is why you should factor in that time when you're planning out how long you have to write on a screenplay. Anyway, we're getting into another aspect.
There's a whole other thing, and I am going to pause the conversation because what we've just talked about now is the idea of pitching an original idea. From a business perspective. There are lots of other pitches. There are pitching on jobs. I think we should do that on a different day.
I agree.
It's a whole other process.
Let's get back to writing.
So let's get back to writing our original idea that we chose not to pitch. Instead, we're writing it with you.
Indeed.
So last time, which was now like 6 days ago.
Last Wednesday?
Last Wednesday. So a week ago. It's been a week, guys. So I don't even remember where we left off. And
why don't we have a little look? Let's open up our document. Let's have a little read. Let's just read through the whole document, reacquaint ourselves with it.
I think it's a great idea.
And while you're doing that, I'll give the usual spiel. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Jake Thornton. Jake Thornton. And Ben is at Ben_Lustig. We're also on Facebook, where some people are watching us live now. Lustig Thornton is our page there. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's this continues to be fun, and I'm enjoying it. So, all right. So I think we should just go back up to the very top, we don't have to read it word for word, but I just think reacquaint ourselves with the scenes we have in order.
I think you're right. I think that's a good idea. So
because you've literally had a baby since last time.
I've literally had a baby.
More life into the world.
My brain is fried. So,
all right then. So our story begins in 1925 Chicago, with a group of people who look like mobsters, 2 men and 2 women, in a car going through the Chicago streets. They arrive outside the Tribune Tower. They go in. Someone whispers something into the security guard's ear. We don't hear what it is, but he breaks down crying. We go into the lobby. They continue through to the boiler room. In the lobby, one of our characters, played by Charlize Theron, sees a group of children and is concerned by that, but masks this from the leader of their group, transformed from the norm by the nuclear goop. Downstairs, they start to set a bomb. We realize that, oh my goodness, that this is that this is what they're up to. They leave. Charlize says, "Oh, I forgot my ring. Can't remember what the ring was about, but maybe we can figure that out." Goes back down, starts to disable the bomb when her boss comes in, and they have a big fight. During this fight, they take the kind of punishment that no normal person could possibly withstand. And in the reflection of some spilled water, we see that these, what we thought were people, are in fact some kind of other being.
Right.
Charlize gets out, gets the better of her boss, and leaves, running past her compatriots in the lobby and out into the crowded Chicago streets.
Mm-hmm.
At that moment, shall I continue, or do you want to take over?
Oh, sure. At that moment, we cut to 100 years later. We're in a small mountain town. Charlize is there, and she hasn't aged a day. And we're like, huh? What the fuck is she? We're in a diner. She's having lunch at the counter. So we see after this like kind of grandma lady behind who tells her a joke, and we realize that Charlize is kind of a stick in the mud to a certain degree. But she's also a regular here. She's having demonish food, black coffee and charred bacon. And then on a screen, she sees that a domestic terror attack has stricken Portland. There was a bridge that was blown up. Oh my goodness. We don't know anything about it, but there's something in Charlize's mind, and we probably just see it in her eyes going, huh, wonder what that was. Mm-hmm. We go back to Charlize's home. We see that it's very sparse. This is a demon's home. She doesn't have any personal photos. She doesn't have a life. She doesn't have any real humanity, but she does have a cat, which is a symbol of her growing humanity. And she also likes 1940s jazz, because who doesn't? She pours a glass of whiskey because Charlize drinks whiskey, I guess. I don't know. Then she goes into the bathroom, and it's going to be this crazy scalding hot water that is steaming like nuts. Charlize gets in. We still don't know she's a demon, but she's done these weird things, and now it's like, holy shit, she got in. She doesn't burn. It relaxes her. But just as she closes her eyes, boom, something happens. Spidey sense. She goes, holy shit, it's like she's having a heart attack. What the fuck? She tries to stand up out. She grabs the shower curtain, falls to the floor, boom, blackout. And we cut to, Jake,
a supermarket, and we're in the butcher's department. We meet a character called Hank, who is working behind the butcher counter. right here, and he's yes, he's asking if he's seen the shit about Portland. Here he looks at his cell, sees the news. That's interesting. He goes back home. We see on the bumper of his car he has a coexist bumper sticker. He goes into his backyard, goes to a small shed and enters it. And here downstairs is a bunch of what we'll call Ghostbuster shit. It's almost like you know, the Batcave.
It's the Batcave with Ghostbusters level tech.
Yes, exactly right. And he opens up he's looking at all this different activity to tracking demonic activity on Earth using some means, probably, you know, stuff you could actually track, like CO2 levels or nitrogen levels or methane levels or whatever. Seismic,
gravitational stuff, seismic energy. Yeah, absolutely
right. And Portland is flashing red. He opens up a locker filled with an arsenal of guns. He fills a duffel bag with grenades, pistols, and lastly, an ancient silver blade covered with Aramaic script. Who the fuck is this guy? We'll be asking. He leaves and throws the duffel in the trunk, peels out. At that point, we go to Portland. And this, I believe, is
where we ended the actual outlining, but we did say what we thought we were going to do here. We're going to see Sam as the person she is. Then the cops are going to show up. She thinks she's there. They're there for her because, remember, Sam is a bit of a fuck up and probably has had some minor incidents with the police. But actually, her family was all killed on the bridge. Holy shit, she freaks out. And then we're going to cut back to Charlize the next morning, and she suspects the worst and ends up with a run-in in a demon, and we probably won't get that far. So now, let's just talk about Sam. Cool. So far, well, question first. This is the first read-through we've actually done of the outline. Does anything pop out at you? Because I've got a couple of things that pop out at me.
What do you have?
So the first thing is that obsidian ring, and you called it out as we were reading. The question that I have is twofold. One, does she still have it 100 years later? We call it out. In fact, we even put it in all caps as we were doing this. What is its symbolism? I like that she has an object from her past, by the way. That's actually something cool. But it has to have meaning, and it has to then come back and have importance in the story. To give someone something that's so specific and then never use it is a waste, I think, of storytelling. So I think, and I'm just going to put a note. I don't think we have to focus on it right now.
No, yeah, totally. Yeah.
But I think we need a note just to go, what is this? I like it. Our instinct said to put it in. And I always...
Yeah, and we were trying to figure out, it was born out of, what would she have that she could lose and leave behind?
And that was important.
And that was important.
That they would believe that she would go back for, you know? Yes. What is the rate?
Viewers can't see this note, but we're just giving it
important. I'm making a note just saying, what is the ring and what is its importance? Okay, so you see the little yellow thing in this software. That yellow thing leaves us a note that we can then go back to later. All right. The other thing that jumped out at me is this Hank moment with the coexist bumper sticker. I'm wondering if it's a conflict of character.
I feel like it is.
That's who he is. And that's not whom I'm imagining who he is anymore.
I agree. Strike it.
Yeah. It didn't feel right in the moment.
I agree. Yeah. Take it out.
So this is also the great thing about the process of outlining, guys, is that as you read these outlines, these types of things stick out at you. You don't have to wait till the script to go, wait a minute, his character doesn't make any sense. You can get that shit done in the outline.
Totally. So I watched the new Hellraiser over the weekend, which I actually really liked a lot. I thought it was really fun.
Cool. I want to watch it.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, the makeup effects are fantastic in it, and they've done a cool thing with the story. That you go, oh, well, didn't see that coming, which is neat.
Yeah.
Now in it, the lead character is she's a recovering junkie. But you kind of see that maybe she's just kind of slips in and out of it, and you know, is with a guy who's not great for her because they met in a program, and perhaps if he sleeps, she could slip back in too. Anyway, I wonder if there's something to kind of borrow a little bit from that character, and I don't think I don't think it steps too much into stealing territory, because I just think it's that's a kind of person who exists.
Absolutely. I'm imagining, as you're saying this, that she does have a boyfriend, and that they are probably drug users, and that they've got like a studio apartment with like the bed, the mattresses on the floor, and not much else but like a shitty coffee table and like a PlayStation 2 and like it's like that kind of place, And I think so. What's interesting to me too is that this is a 22-year-old girl. And actually, we see this type of character sometimes in teenagers. I think it's interesting seeing it in someone in their 20s, because the truth is that happens a lot in your 20s. I knew people in my 20s who had problems, especially like, when you don't know what you want to do with your life, or if you have a troubled past and you end up going down this road. I was just seeing in my mind that the cops knock on the door and she runs.
I think it's
think of Terminator 2.
Totally. They've been doing some kind of dealing. I think
it could just be because they have possession of drugs and she's on probation.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
All she like it. I don't think it should be like hardcore where she's like a super hardcore criminal, but she's clearly a fuck up.
Totally.
And so she runs from the cops.
Yeah, great.
And we could get a nice little moment of just her own agency, but then she's stopped. And they're like, stop running.
Yes.
We're just here to talk.
Yes.
And she gives them all kinds of attitude. She's like, what the fuck do you want to talk about? I don't give a shit, pig, whatever it is.
It's your mom.
It's your, we talked about her even having like a little brother.
Yes.
It could be, I think it's like her parents and her brother were all on this bridge.
Great.
Like her whole fucking family just got killed.
Totally. And it's going to send her into a fucking downward spiral. She's going to go back. Oh. She's going to do whatever she does.
About having a boyfriend is the boyfriend can be like the kind of person who tries to like fight with Charlize and just gets like taken down in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, totally. Kind of like the boyfriend's going to die.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Especially if the demons show up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe, this could be cool. Maybe he doesn't die fighting Charlize and Hank or whatever, but they find him and get him and fucking torture him.
So it's like again, it's Terminator. The Terminator comes to John Connor's house and fucking kills his parents. Totally. I'm down with that. I think it's cool.
Great.
So
demon torture.
Is there a place? I've never actually been to Portland, Jake. I've got to come up and visit. Is there a type of place that feels like where junkies would live, or is this just a random part?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We got diverted off the highway a couple of weekends ago, and we went to this super sketch neighborhood where there were full-on prostitutes on the corner on a Sunday afternoon.
So let's just call it a sketchy neighborhood. Great. Prostitutes on the corner, dealers in the alleys.
Great. Yeah. And we're then we go into the apartment and we're seeing them. I mean, what are they doing when we see them? Are they still asleep?
So let's go interior studio apartment.
Yeah.
And it should be fucking dirty.
Oh yeah, it's a fucking shit.
And I do think it's fun. Let's see. We cut from, obviously it's night, but it doesn't matter. I think it's day. They've been asleep. It's like midday, and they're still
absolutely
shades drawn. It's dirty. Drug paraphernalia on the coffee table. Table. And Sam is asleep in bed with her boyfriend who's like fucking loser asleep.
Yes, and we'll say asleep. Sam is, and we'll obviously introduce Sam here, what she looks like, what she's wearing.
Yes. And I think she's got piercings and tattoos. I think she's got colored hair. I think she's got to be like your idea of someone who
lives in Portland.
She might even, this is really fucking interesting, dude. what if on our midnight run journey, she's going through withdrawals?
Oh, that's
What if
interesting.
she's like what if she's like she uses heroin?
Totally.
And like they
Great.
have to get that first night, she
Great.
gets sick.
That's great. I mean, it's
You
not great, it's
know?
awful, but yeah, it's great.
It's awful, but it'll give us so much meat for that act 2, you know. Sam's a a hard drug user with and looks the part basically.
Yeah, sure.
Script.
Great.
There's a knock at the door.
Yeah. And who gets up? Does he get up first and looks outside the window and is like, fuck, it's the fucking cops. And then she runs out the back.
So this is the scene.
They're there for her. They're looking for her.
This is the scene that I'm seeing in my mind, right?
Yeah.
She fucking crawls out of bed. She's in a t-shirt and like her underwear.
Yeah.
Right? And she fucking crawls out of bed, looks through the peephole, and it's the cops. And they're like, Sam, we got to come up with a last name. Sam so-and-so, you in there? And she's like, fuck, it's the cops. Yeah. Boyfriend wakes up. Shit, what do we do? Yeah. And she's like, fuck. And she like runs over, like grabs some like a pair of jeans. Like
jeans on a pair of sneakers. She's like,
Sam, yeah. Portland PD, open up, whatever it is. Yeah. And she fucking jumps out the fire escape.
Yeah.
And as she's like running out the fire escape, we should see her like basically, I think by the time she gets down the fire, I don't think this is a long chase. I just think she's trying to run. She gets down the fire escape and there's like the cops are there and they're going,
sure. Yeah.
We're not here to bust you.
Yeah.
Lady,
Great. Awesome. Great.
This is just to set up character more than anything else.
Totally, exactly.
Sam,
drug user. She's when the cops show up, she's the kind of person who's worried about that because she's on.
Exactly.
Well, here she's on probation. Yes,
it jumps out the window.
Yeah.
She's on probation.
Yeah. She's not supposed to be using.
The drugs would send her back to jail.
Yeah.
Jail. But at the bottom, fire escape.
Yeah.
So this is actually a continuous. This is a slug thing.
Yes, totally. This is continuous.
Right? So exterior,
yeah.
Sam's apartment building.
Yeah.
Hell, this button. When I push function on this new keyboard, that's what comes up, isn't it?
It doesn't show on it. Doesn't show. Is it the emoji panel?
Yes.
It drives me crazy. It happens to me all the time.
Building. Apartment building.
Continuous.
Sam climbs down the fire escape, but the partner of the cop is waiting.
Yeah.
They're not here to bust her.
Mm-hmm.
Bust her. Her parents and younger brother killed in the bombing.
Yes.
Sam doesn't believe it. Tries calling them. No answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
She crumbles to the floor.
Yes. Yeah. Then I think there's a moment back in her apartment when she's with her boyfriend. They shoot up.
Yes, because this is how she deals with the pain.
How she deals with it.
Interior, Sam's apartment.
We call it studio apartment. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll change that. I think it should just be Sam's apartment.
Yeah.
Although actually, studio apartment, we don't know who Sam is yet. Sam's apartment ends up being the new location because it is Sam's apartment. Oops. But either way.
Yeah.
Sam's apartment. Day. Boyfriend tries to console Sam by prepping a needle.
Yep.
And they shoot up together.
Right. Great. Cool. And that's our introduction to Sam. And that's who she is.
Well,
when you meet her at the start.
What a great introduction to this, what will ultimately be heroic character.
Yes, totally. What an arc. What an arc. What a journey to go on.
Yeah. She's a
well,
drug addict
now. So my son's coming to say hello. I'm just finishing up my live stream, Phoenix. So can you come?
Hello, Phoenix.
Everybody, this is Phoenix. We're streaming
Phoenix
right now.
I'm gonna get Jake a sign for his door that says
yes, do not disturb.
You know, on live, do not disturb. Something to hang on your door.
I know, I need to do that.
You have glass doors. I think
I do have glass doors, so they can actually. But this is the thing. This is what it looks like when we're just working anyway, isn't it?
This is exactly what it looks like. So welcome to our writer's room. All right. Well, you know what? We didn't get as much outlining, but we had a great talk, and actually we pushed through this whole section, which is
great.
The next section is going to be completely new, and I think we should save that for tomorrow.
Indeed. Fantastic. Thanks so much, Ben. Good stuff.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming back and joining us after a week. And we'll see you tomorrow. All right. Bye everybody.